So the last session in this very interesting and exciting conference will be about, begins with a presentation about the Ducal Prussian letter archive, which contains incoming and outgoing correspondence, as well as invoices. Closely related to it is a series of book records called registers with copies primarily of incoming and outgoing correspondence. The registers are part of the so-called East Prussian folios, which are linked chronologically to what can be called Orden folios. I would like to invite Mr. Heckmann from the Secret State Archives of the Prussian Cultural Heritage Foundation in Berlin. Please.
Thank you very much. Vielen Dank und vielen Dank auch für die Einladung. Ich bin inzwischen emeritiert, also im Ruhestand, und insofern eine kleine Korrektur, was meine Tätigkeit betrifft. Das Herzoglich Preußische Briefarchiv, HBA genannt, lässt sich, meine Damen und Herren, in seiner historischen Bedeutung mit dem Vatikanischen Archiv oder den großen europäischen Kronarchiven vergleichen. Das HBA ist Teil des Staatsarchivs Königsberg im Geheimen Staatsarchiv Preußischer Kulturbesitz zu Berlin. Das HBA ist die Fortsetzung des Ordensbriefarchivs, also des Briefarchivs der Hochmeister des Deutschen Ordens bis 1525 und der preußischen Ordensverwaltung in Preußen. Es setzt mit der Umwandlung, das HBA ist wie gesagt die Fortsetzung des Ordensbriefarchivs und setzt mit der Umwandlung der Deutschordensherrschaft Preußen in ein weltliches Herzogtum, Fürstentum durch den letzten Hochmeister und nachmaligen ersten preußischen Herzog Albrecht von Brandenburg-Ansbach im Jahre 1525 ein, also es beginnt im Jahre 1525. Das HBA wurde im 19. Jahrhundert von den zuständigen Königsberger Archivaren abschließend, also bis heute, geordnet und entsprechend aufgestellt. Es enthält, wie das ältere Ordensbriefarchiv, zumeist ungebundenes, also loses Schriftgut. Darunter sind, wie zu erwarten ist, kaum Urkunden zu finden. Dafür umfasst es zumeist ein- und ausgehendes Schriftgut sowie Rechnungsgut, Gutachten und sogenannte Zeitungen. Die ausgegangenen Schreiben sind häufig in Form von paläographisch anspruchsvollen Konzepten überliefert. Die Beständeübersicht des Geheimen Staatsarchivs in Berlin, also die Beständeübersicht der verwahrenden Stelle des Königsberger Archivs, gibt derzeit das HBA mit 118 laufenden Meter Schriftgut, anders gesagt zu 75.000 Verzeichnungseinheiten an. Das ist also schon beachtlich vom Umfang her. Im engen Zusammenhang mit dem HBA steht vor allem eine Reihe von Registranten, auch Briefbücher genannte Buchüberlieferung mit Abschriften, vornehmlich der Ein- und der ausgegangenen Korrespondenz. Diese Briefbücher oder Registranten machen einen Großteil der sogenannten ostpreußischen Folianten mit 675 laufenden Metern oder 10.580 Verzeichnungseinheiten aus. Zudem bietet das Etatministerium mit rund 557 laufenden Metern zu 120.000 Verzeichnungseinheiten Ergänzungen. Das Etatministerium ging aus einer herzoglichen Behörde hervor, die sich ursprünglich mit Ständeangelegenheiten beschäftigt hatte. Daher rührt auch ihr Name. Ständeangelegenheiten gab es vor allem mit dem Königreich Polen und mit dem vom polnischen König und gleichzeitigen Großfürsten von Litauen stark beeinflussten Kurland zu verhandeln. Soweit die kurze Einführung. Gestatten Sie mir zunächst den Aufbau des Herzoglich-Preußischen Briefarchivs, des HBA also, zu skizzieren. Wie Sie hier der Grafik entnehmen möchten, besteht das HBA aus den Abteilungen A bis J. Diese Abteilungen gliedern sich in sogar Unterabteilungen. Davon ausgenommen sind die umfangreichen Abteilungen E bis F. Die Abteilungen A bis G sind nach geografischen Gesichtspunkten geordnet, die Abteilungen H mit Gesandtschaftssachen, J mit Inneres und K Herzogliches Haus, Persönliches folgen dem Sachprinzip, also eine Teilung zwischen geografischem und Sachprinzip. Im Folgenden möchte ich beispielhaft die Abteilungen A, G und H vorstellen. Auf dieser Folie hier können Sie sehen, dass die Unterabteilung A1 die Korrespondenz mit dem Kaiser und den Habsburgischen Niederlanden zwischen 1525 und 1571 enthält. Und Sie können dabei feststellen, auf welche Kästen dieser Schriftwechsel verteilt ist. Zudem ist die Berichtszeit der Konzepte und ihre Verteilung auf die nummerierten Kästen angegeben. Auf der nächsten Folie habe ich den aktuellen Stand der editorischen Bearbeitung dieser Abteilung A wiedergegeben. Sie sehen, dass zwischen 1954, also der erste Eintrag, und 2017 lediglich 3 größere Erschließungsarbeiten erschienen sind. Auf der nächsten Folie ist dieser Editionsstand wiederholt, um hier anzuzeigen, dass von der Abteilung A nur die Unterabteilung 5 überhaupt editorisch bearbeitet worden ist. Die Unterabteilung 5, wie Sie sehen, enthält den Schriftwechsel mit Ungarn, Böhmen und Schlesien. Mit anderen Worten, die Unterabteilungen A1 bis A4a, wir klein a, harren noch der Entschließung, also die sind noch gar nicht bearbeitet. Welche Schätze Erschließungsarbeiten heben können, möchte ich am Beispiel der gesüdeten Ungarnkarte auf Folio 6 zeigen, mit der entsprechenden Signatur, die Sie sich merken können. Da können Sie mit dieser Signatur auch sofort im Geheimen Staatsarchiv diese Karte aufrufen bzw. bestellen. Die hier zu sehende kolorierte Karte ist undatiert. Ihre Entstehung oder die ihrer Vorlage dürfte noch ins Spätmittelalter hineinreichen. G ist die letzte Abteilung, die nach geografischen Gesichtspunkten geordnet worden ist, wie auf dieser Folie Sie sehen können. Sie ist mit insgesamt 13 Kästen umfangarm. Die Abteilung G enthält zum überwiegenden Teil Schriftwechsel mit den Königreichen Frankreich und England. Die reiche Korrespondenz mit den burgundisch-habsburgischen Niederlande mit insgesamt 21 Kästen ist bis auf wenige Ausnahmen nicht erfasst. Die Königsberger Kollegen des 19. Jahrhunderts haben diese, wie oben auf Folio 3, festgehalten. Ich gehe nochmal zurück. Der Abteilung A1 zugewiesen. Hier sehen Sie, die Niederlande sind hier entsprechend ausgewiesen. Die Abteilung G ist seit 1999 mittels Volltextabschriften und Vollregesten komplett erschlossen. Fast die Hälfte der Vorlagen ist in lateinischer Sprache abgefasst, der andere Teil in Deutsch. Die Kästen enthalten eine Vielzahl von Rechnungen, was vor allem darauf zurückzuführen ist, dass Herzog Albrecht einen lothringischen Kaufmann aus dem Barbois-Mouvant zu einem seiner Liga oder Faktoren bestellt hatte, um mit dem französischen Hof einen umfangreichen Handel mit Pottasche und anderen Waldwaren aufzubauen. Zu diesem Zweck unternahm der lothringische Kaufmann mit Namen Antoine Maillet zwischen 1562 und 1564 eine aufwendige Handelsreise an den französischen Hof, der sich bei Maillets Ankunft in Frankreich allerdings, der Hof, der sich allerdings an der Loire aufhielt. Die Stationen von Maillets Hin- und Rückreise können Sie hier auf der Karte ersehen, wie umfangreich und wie langwierig diese Reise hier gedauert hat und wo die Stationen sind. Die Abstecher, die Maillet auf der Hinreise nach Kopenhagen, also nach Dänemark, unternommen hatte und die Maillet von Paris aus an die Küste der Normandie, also nach Rouen und Le Havre, durch einen Beauftragten ausführen ließ, sollen die Verbindungen zum französischen Botschafter für Dänemark und den Ostseeraum sowie den bereits begonnenen Schiffstransport der Handelsware, also nach Le Havre, hier ist ja Havre de Grace früher, und Rouen anzeigen. Auf dieser Folie habe ich die wesentlichen Informationen zur Abteilung H zusammengetragen. Sie ist, wie bereits erwähnt, die erste Abteilung, die im 19. Jahrhundert nach dem Sachprinzip geordnet wurde. Von den insgesamt 140 Kästen der Abteilung sind lediglich die Gesandtschaftsangelegenheiten des Ahasver vom Brand vollständig erschlossen. Die jüngste Bearbeitung erschien 1953, wie Sie sehen, im Druck. Das war's. Vielen Dank für die Aufmerksamkeit.
So the next speaker is a historian currently working at the Móra Ferenc Museum in Szeged, and his research focuses on the Italian vendetta narratives. His presentation will be about fighting between two families, as well as turning points in the story of reconciliation of this struggle. He will also show how this case might be interpreted and analyze it in particular features. So I would like to invite Zoltán Szolnoki.
Thank you for your kind words. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, my name is Zoltán Szolnoki. I gladly thank you for your presence on my following lecture, which entitled From Vendetta Towards Marriage, the Salimbeni Montanini Case, and I have a subtitle because I narrowed the topic for the choice of Anselmo. I will present the story of Angelica Montanini and Anselmo Salimbeni from an unconventional perspective. The story takes place in the 14th century Siena, but as we will see, the authors wrote about it much later in the second half of the 15th century. I will talk about the story in details later, but first I would say that the story presents a conflict that ends with a marriage. And we can ask that what sources do we have about this? The story of Angelica and Anselmo, as pointed out by Monica Marchi, was a topos of medieval Sinese literature. According to many, this novel could be based on a much older tradition, and the oldest version wrote by an unknown person named Pseudo-Gentile Sermini, who was active before Bernardo Lapini or the so-called Il Licino. The story was made really famous by the latter, who expanded it in a literary style. And as we can see, this version survived in three codices with small differences, and the story in Annali Senesi, according to the scientific literature, is a simplified version of Lapini's novel. In the next few minutes, I will present this version of the story, so the Annali Senesi kind story, setting a parallel with vendetta narratives. And first, therefore, it is worth briefly discussing the general structure of vendettas. Focusing on narrative sources, vendetta can be seen as a violent response, the starting point of which is always some kind of insult. It could be physical or verbal too, and if we want to define the structure of vendetta narratives, we can establish that the following structure. It is worth pointing out that the authors wrote down the stories with popular structural elements, with details of symbolic elements, which could be used to emphasize or supporting the story's main message. And in general, it can be stated that the majority of urban authors associated negative thoughts with revenge, as if stigmatizing the participators who belong to the city elite or the so-called grandi. The symbolic elements usually emphasized that the participants made a decision in the given situation that had a negative effect on their own destiny and disturbed the pax urbana, or the so-called peace of the city. It may be worth to mention that the chroniclers who wrote about vendetta were linked to the popolo, which could be described as political opposition of the old city elite and the grandi. At the end, conflicts real closure can be brought about by public peacemaking events sponsored by the city, the district, or the so-called street societies. And these peacemaking events had many elements. A very important one was a marriage agreement between even several couples. And as we will see below in the story of Anselmo and Angelica, each of the presented points will occur but with different content. On the slide I also listed some additional elements of the agreements, but no, I don't want to speak more about this. Let's see the novel from the Annali Senesi. Our story takes place in Siena in 1395. In the pages of Annali Senesi we can read that the conflict arose between the Montanini and the Salimbeni during a hunting event which escalated into violence. A Montanini family member wounded the Salimbeni, and after that a long factional fight began, which led to the almost complete extinction of the Montanini and the Salimbeni families, as wrote by the author. It is worth to mention that the initial conflict of the story can be easily be synchronized with the insults that, according to vendetta stories, take place in pubs during games or hunting events. In the next phase of the story, the following situation unfolds before us. The last surviving member of the Montanini family, Carlo, lives on his country estate with his sister Angelica. And one of the girl's qualities, as we can read, that she is an angelic beauty. Anselmo Salimbeni, who lives nearby the Montanini estate, passes by them every day, where he usually sees that the amazingly beautiful Angelica. However, he fell in love with her. He does not dare to speak with her because their families are ancient enemies. In the continuation of the story, we can read that Carlo Montanini is caught in the crossfire of an unnamed citizen of the city of Siena. The man called just Cittadino in our story wants to acquire the Montanini estate for himself. He gets Carlo to take out a loan that he cannot repay, and since no repayment will be made, the head of the family must personally answer for his debt, which leads to his capture, and the men of the city, or the city clerks, took him into prison, and with the possibility of a death sentence. And after that, Anselmo sees Angelica again in the following days, but notices that she looks terribly sad. However, since he cannot speak to her, he goes to the city for the cause of her sadness, and here the man from the city office tells that Carlo Montanini is about to be sentenced to death. He also mentions that Anselmo have a great fortune this time, since he can watch the destruction of the Montanini family without him even to raise a hand. This is the point in our story when the main character is faced with a decision. On the one hand, he can let things happen, or he can save the brother of Angelica. It should be emphasized that in the story, the officer of the regimento was a special type of Senese government, the officer of regimento appears as a supporter of vendetta, as he would tempt Anselmo into inaction, which is equivalent to revenge for this time. In connection with this, the author highlights the following as Anselmo's dilemma: to follow the rules of noble behavior and take revenge for the wrong suffered, or to ignore the vendettas that always start again and forgive. Related to these thoughts, we can read another important question: have you gone too far from your noble ancestors? Anselmo asks it from himself when he's thinking that maybe he would choose revenge. According to the author's argument, therefore, vendetta would be a departure from the noble ancestors at the same time. The author describes the member of the Salimbeni family as more noble than revenge, while the true propagandist of vendetta is the aforementioned Cittadino and the city officer. And finally, after a long struggle, Anselmo decides to pay Carlo's fine and his debt, but anonymously without his name. And when the head of the Montanini family is released from prison, he decides to thank his anonymous benefactor. Whoever he was, he adds Angelica as his wife. There will be complications in the story when Anselmo's identity is revealed, but in the end, Angelica will marry the Salimbeni man. The end of the story is very significant. The young couple march into Siena with the cheers of the crowd. It is worth examining what thoughts and traits the author attributed to the characters. In the vendetta narratives, the noble and grandi characters are propagators of vendetta and prioritizing their own individual interests, and the members of the popolo were shown as the men of the peace. But in Anselmo's decision-making situation, the opposite happens. With his peace-seeking decision, thoughtfulness and generosity won. It should be emphasized, however, that the main character is motivated by two main things. First, the greatness of his noble ancestors, and second, the personality of Angelica. Some basic traits of Anselmo could be observed. He is rich, he has a noble origin, and he has a noble soul. There is the possibility of revenge, as I mentioned. In this case, Anselmo was thinking himself as somebody who degenerated from his ancestors and as somebody with a villager behavior or a villano. After his choice, he gained some positive traits, such as gentilhomme or gentleman and kindness. And some words about Carlo Montanini. We cannot read so much about his thoughts, of course, because he's not a main protagonist of the story. But there is the other turning point when Carlo made a decision too in our story, because at one point in the story it is also mentioned that Carlo would not reward his rescuer because when Anselmo's identity is revealed, he becomes uncertain. In that case, however, he would think himself as an ungrateful villano or a village person, similar as Anselmo thought. So we can say that in the case of Anselmo and Carlo, the noble grandi behavior become into opposition with the other parts of the society. But in this case, the aforementioned grandi are the examples of peaceful thinking, while the citizens wanted to motivate them to revenge. And not at least, Cittadino is suggested as somebody from the highest ranks of the popolo. And of course, Angelica is the most balanced character. She is the symbol of goodness in the whole story. So we can say that the author suggests the greatness of Anselmo's and Carlo's decision with a number of additional traits, while other groups of Siena, such as the townspeople, the officials, or even the so-called cittadino, were shown in a more negative light. It is therefore worthwhile to briefly examine the place of the Salimbeni and Montanini families based on various sources and the literature. The importance of the Salimbeni family is well known, but a brief description is perhaps not useless. First, we can ask the question that in reality the Salimbeni were involved in vendettas. Of course, they did. The Salimbeni clan was one of the most influential families in Siena. In the first half of the Trecento, they were involved in almost all the major factional wars, usually against the rival Ptolemy family, and I listed some of the vendettas they involved. These were happened under the special Senese government, the so-called Nove or Nine, which based on, at least nominally, popolo-dominated rule. In this time, some of the grandi entitled as Casati families and excluded from most of the city offices, and the Ptolemy and the Salimbeni were Casati too. After the period, the Nove followed by the so-called Reggimento, which was based on political groups, the Monti, and 1355, after 1365, the Salimbeni fought not just against the other clans, but the government and the Monti also. In these decades, the Salimbeni remained in political exile, and as a response, they wanted to overthrow the city's actual leadership several times by armed forces, mainly because their efforts to gain power was banned from the highest city office. They banned from the highest city offices again and again, so they satisfied their political ambitions primarily with offices and assignments outside the city. For example, diplomatic missions and podesta assignments in other towns. In his relevant monograph, Alessandro Carniani highlighted that they created a quasi-signorial county estates which allowed them to field up to 100 armed horsemen. And also, after several attempts of violent rebellion, they were exiled from the city after 1418. Of course, they tried to return after this, and we can say that in these periods the Salimbeni wasn't the propagators of peace in reality, but the active participants of violent events and vendettas. And some words about the Montanini family. Their political role was indeed more moderate than the Salimbeni, but at the end of the 13th century and the first half of the 14th century, they gained considerable influence. Their ancestors were the lords of the royal rural fortress called Bigozzo, and last but not least, they appeared as business partners of the powerful Bonsignori family. They already took part in the city management of the Nove, and William Bowski suggested that they belonged to the families whose origin and political vis was almost comparable to the Casati families, and after these years, they were among the ranks of the Nove. So we can say that the heyday of the Montanini family therefore fell during the Nove, the periods of the Nove, in which they were permanent representatives of the government. In summary, we can say that the story in Annali Senesi contains turning points similar to vendetta narratives. The characters are repeatedly put in decision-making situations. They can choose between vendetta and peace-seeking behavior, and unlike traditional stories, there will be peace, not revenge. Anselmo Salimbeni's role and his choice in the story is a particularly significant one, since while in the history of Siena, the Salimbeni usually prioritized violent conflict resolutions, Anselmo didn't. His positive character traits and his marriage to Angelica demonstrate his decision-making power, and it's also important to point out that while in the 13th and 14th century the chroniclers presented the popolo as enemies of vendetta, the Anonimo Senese presents a different story in the second half of the 15th century. In my opinion, the main goal was to present the Grandi in a more positive way and to criticize the city administration and the popolo. Thank you very much for your attention, and some bibliography last but not least. So thank you very much.
The next presentation is about changes in the use of seals by the Hungarian aristocracy at the end of the Middle Ages. This research is the result of a project implemented in Hungary with the support of the DA Scientific Research Fund transnational grant. A collection of seals with a digital catalog was created in the repository of the University of Debrecen since 2024. The first speaker, Ádám Novák, has been working in the research group Memoria Hungariae at the University of Debrecen. He is a specialist in medieval Hungarian seals, focusing on the collection, analysis, and publication of 15th century documents with multiple seals. In 2024, he created a digital database catalog of the 15th century polysigillic charters, which will be analyzed in his presentation. And the second speaker is a PhD student who took part in the project, and he presents the second part of the paper.
Dear conference, dear colleagues, now I'm standing before you as like a presenter, not the technical organizer. Our presentation will have two parts. The first part, I would like to show you an examination for sea usage in the end of the 15th century, beginning of the 16th century, Hungarian secular nobles. In another part of the presentation, my colleague Sándor Ónadi will show you the base of this project, base of this examination, the project, which we worked nearly 1 year ago. So, firstly, some introduction to the topic. In the medieval kingdom of Hungary, the secular charters, secular charterists were mostly used green or natural colored wax to authenticate their charters. Until the mid-14th century, this use of the seal wax, red seal wax, was only royal privilege. This privilege, which means representing power, was first granted to the leaders of the church. In 1351, it was declared by law all nobles enjoyed equal rights. The use of the red wax and the acquisition of the title of the Herzoglich drove a wedge between the unified nobility already in the beginning of the 15th century. In my presentation, I will examine how it process gaining momentum at the end of the 15th century and what changes it brought about in Hungarian society, and answer some questions. For example, did the title of hereditary commerce go together with the right to use red wax? Were those who could not use the red wax thrown out of the power? Did the seal wax color retain a significance in the early 16th century? Power or just a rank? That is the question, because by the mid-15th century, several nobles' families were using red seal wax. The question arises, did it come with more rank or also with power? The so-called polysecilic documents allow for the examination of issue. It can be observed whether the strict hierarchical order of the sealing was changed by the use of the red wax or not. And I bring you one example from the 15th century. As you can see, this is one charter from 1440, and we can see on the slide 13 seals. First four belongs to ecclesiastical dignitaries, that are in red. The first secular person who used red wax was Ulrich of Celje. You can use red wax because he is imperial count. After the first secular person from Hungary, the most highest dignities in that charter, he was Ladislaus Garai, Ban of Macho. He used green wax. After in the row Ulrich of Celje, and after we can found two red wax from counts of Kórógyi and Korbáviai, who before the former dignitaries and those who without office who used the green wax. Evidently, in the first half of 15th century, the count titles did not yet bring greater power, as we can see in the case of Kórógyi and the Korbáviai family, but they did increase the prestige of their holders. It had a representational power because of the high number of illiterate people. Throughout the century, many people sought to acquire the right to consider it means of gaining wit and political power. The next step in the secular use of the red wax was the election of John Hunyadi as a governor. The governor was the first Hungarian dignitary to surpass even the Palatine in the hierarchy. His appointment as a governor ended after the return of Ladislaus V in 1453. The ruler then extended the Hunyadi coat of arms, bestowed on him the title of Count Bystrica, and appointed him as a captain general of the country. Thus, John Hunyadi managed to avoid loss of prestige. He was able to officially keep his hierarchical position. He was the first Hungarian secular lord to hold the dignity and title that elevated him above the Palatine, and was allowed to proclaim it was the use of the red wax. As we can see, for example, one charter from 1570s, the first two secular ecclesiastical dignitaries use red wax, and after Hunyadi use red one, and after Ladislaus, now it's as like Palatine, use green wax. And this is the one of the best seal from best was seal from John Ónadi from 1456. During the reign of King Matthias, the number of the people using red wax skyrocketed. In 1465, Emeric Szapolyai received the title of the heralded Count of Spiš country, and with the right to use red seal wax. This one belonged to him. From 1471, Nicholas Újlaki, as a king of Bosnia, was also allowed to use red wax. The one and only one example from him, this is from 1474. At the same time, Treasurer John Ernust was hereditary Comas of two roads from 1470, and Nicholas Bánffy of Alsólandva became hereditary Comas after Arad in 1471, and then Pressburg from 1478 instead of Arad. Neither of them automatically switched to red wax. Bánffy only received this right as a special reward in 1483. Peter Geréb of Wingard and his brother Matthias were appointed Count of Wingard by sovereign in 1487. The color of the wax therefore clearly became a means of representation. Nobility, still legally unified, was already differentiated in wealth and power. And those who used red wax became more equal than equals as they gained other privileges. In 1498, the Diet passed as an article of law listing the noble families obligated to assemble a bandarja. 38 lords were mentioned by name, and 2 other families who were also given the title of Magnet or Magnificus. From this point onward, the legal distinction was made between lesser and peer nobles. One would think that each of these families named here won the right to use red wax. But if we take a closer look at the Polish-Hungarian peace treaty of 1499, we can see that the title of the Magnificus did not come with the use of red wax. All these people's names in this charter and also in the as Magnificus, but they use green wax in that charter. On the other hand, the title of hereditary Comas and the right to use red wax weighted more heavily in the hierarchical order. In the 15th century, in all cases, the master of the treasury preceded the other country dignitaries, but here we see Bánffy, master of the doorkeepers, and Chamberlain Dragnea before Rášky, master of the treasury. It should also be mentioned in connection with the charter that the right to use the red wax was not inherited within the family, or it was a privilege only granted to the hand of the family. The seal of John of Nicolaus Bánffy is found much further back at the document pressed in green wax. We know several polycyclic charters from the early 16th century. 2 charters from the year 1507 survived, on which we find only red wax seals. Even those nobles used red wax here who later in the early 1510s still sealed their own charters with green wax. For example, Baltazar Battyányi, Péter Korlátkai, and John Bornemisza could press their seals in the red wax in a company of the most esteemed dignitaries of the country. Behind this may lie a sense of solemnity. So we can see on the slide a Polish-Hungarian peace from 1507, and we can only find red wax seal in the below the charter. After this, we only know a polycyclic charter that are bearing red wax. The only exception to this, the charter with 36 seals from 1511, which already described by Dezső Csanky in 1887. 29 red and 7 green seals can be seen on this. Among the seals in green wax, it was John Bornemisza who sealed in red in 1507, but used green here. From 1507 and several years after it. In their case, the superiority of red wax could already be seen. For example, Ambrose Sárkány Máramaros even preceded Bornemisza, the former treasurer. In addition to him, the seals of Hédervári, Lórendfy, Nádasdy, and three other undefined persons were impressed in green. Neither of them played a significant role in the royal court. Here we can see the charter that I mentioned. It takes 36 seals and only 6 in green. In conclusion, we can say that red wax was a tool of power representation in Kingdom of Hungary. This right did not automatically go hand in hand with the title of hereditary commerce, nor with being mentioned in the law of 1498. It did not influence the hierarchy within the secular elite at first, but by the turn of the 15th and the 16th centuries, it partially did. Those who used green wax were placed at the bottom of the hierarchy and their power was visibly reduced. Later, green wax users were completely ousted from power. Either the color of the wax lost in significance after the death of King Vladislaus II, or all members of the power elite acquired the privilege of using red wax. This marked the end of the differentiation of the nobility, even regarding diplomatic externals. Thank you for your attention, and after I give the word to my colleague Sándor Ónadi.
Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, in the title we have promised an analysis and a database. So you have heard the analysis, I will be the database. My name is Sándor Ónadi, and in the second part of the presentation I will briefly outline the progress in creating a digital seal catalog and database, the challenges we face, and our future plans. Despite funding difficulties, our team has successfully launched an open access platform, ensuring the systematic documentation of 15th century seals. Now let's take a closer look to the structure and methodology behind this work. In 2023, Ádám Novák submitted a postdoctoral research proposal to the National Research, Development and Innovation Office entitled Examining the Use of Ecclesiastical and Secular Seals in the 15th Century. His aim was to set up a working group at the University of Debrecen involving students and young researchers with the objective of creating a medieval Hungarian seal database. A comprehensive study of the secular and ecclesiastical seal corpus has long been a much-needed contribution to the Hungarian medieval studies. In the course of our research, we focus on major interstate and domestic treaties from the 15th and 16th centuries, the texts of which are largely known, but their seals are not. Most of these charters are located outside of Hungary and therefore cannot be researched using the database of the Diplomatic Archive and Diplomatic Photo Collection of Hungarian National Archives. For this reason, they need to be identified and published in the framework of a separate project. In addition to source finding, the aim of the project was to conduct in-depth social historical research in accompanying studies who played an important role in the political decision-making of a particular era, what was the program of their heraldic representation, what did they intend to emphasize their seals, and what was the hierarchical order of officials as known from the dignitary ranks always reflected during the sealing process, and so on. Unfortunately, the project was not funded due to the lack of funds. However, thanks to the bridge grant of the University of Debrecen Scientific Research Fund, the DETCA, the project, although with less ambitious objectives, was launched in 2024. In the first step, we took advantage of the services of the university and National Library of the University of Debrecen, and together with the staff of the library, we developed 2 online platforms where the result of the project, the database of seals of the 15th century's policy charters, are published and developed in a traceable way. The university data repository, the VIII databasRenger, is suitable for indexing and making the digital catalog available in the format we envisage, including version number tracking. A table with the new version of number is published every month on the repository with the DOI number. The catalog is developed in an Excel file and is structured as follows. Each polycyclic charter is listed on a worksheet and given a code number based on its date, for example, 4040A. The list contains the diplomatic text description of the charter, its original, reference, and issue. An in-file worksheet is embedded as an active link behind the code of the charter. Thus, by clicking on the code, users can see the description of the seals on the worksheet of the charter, the main characteristics of the seal discussed in each row are given in the respective columns: owner of the seal, its color, its size, description, circumscription, issue, etc. Each seal is given a CSH number, a Corpus Sigillorum Hungarici. The names of seal's owner are also cross-referenced, since a separate worksheet contains data relating to identify each seal holder. In addition to basic biographical information, the relevant literature on the holder is also provided here, along with the CSH number of all his known seal impressions. Before we make it available, the XLSX file is saved as an HTML file and then published. With the simple but widely used method, a digital catalog is created. Thanks to the electronic archive of the University of Debrecen, DEA or DEA, not to be confused with the American Drug Enforcement Administration, run by the university and National Library of the University of Debrecen, we have the opportunity to upload the seal images in a separate collection and make them freely accessible. The collection itself and each seal is given a separate handle identifier, which also acts as a URL so it can be referenced. This is used to add external references to the CSH number in a digital catalog. This way, the seal images are also available from the catalog at the click of a button. The name, a brief description, the owner, the CSH number, and the original archival reference are also indicated with the seal images. As the Haushof und Staatsarchiv, the Staatsarchiv Freiburg in Breslau, the Archiv Mesta Košice, and the Archivum Główne Akt Vojnic, the Varsavia allowed the online publication without any charge. The seal images are also available in open access under the Creative Commons license, the BY NCA, the attribution non-commercial, and share alike. Currently, the version of 1.6 of the online catalog is available with 242 seal description and images of 134 seals. Our project is funded until the 31st of March. The personal data sheets are prepared by master program students Imre Zádori. The seal images are edited by PhD student Csenge Timár and uploaded by master program student Gergő Németh. The project would not have been possible without their help. This year we are applying for funding again, now with the involvement of masters and PhD students, and we are optimistic about the successful application that would allow us to expand the project further. In the meantime, we invite you to explore databases and browse the catalog, and thank you for your attention.
So the last presentation of this session, it is about the transformation of the order Bijlik of Utrecht from the Catholic Habsburg to the Protestant Dutch Republic. The speaker is a senior researcher at the Department of History and Art History of Utrecht University. His main field of research is political and social elites, focusing on the history of nobility in Utrecht from the early Middle Ages to the present time, and the links with the Teutonic order. So I would like to invite Mr. de Bruin.
Thank you, Mihai, for the kind introduction. Thank you for the organization of inviting me to speak here at this conference. In November, on the 10th of November, 1634, the chapter of the bailiwick of Utrecht took an important decision. It ended the rule that lords commanders and land commanders and commanders, when they marry, have to leave the land commandery and the commanderies, so they could marry and stay within the order. And it was the initiative of the then land commander, and at his own interest, because he wanted to marry. And it was Hendrik Casimir of Nassau-Dietz, the stadtholder of Friesland, and his portrait was on the poster of the exhibition I made on the bailiwick of Utrecht 10 years ago. And it was not because he played such an important role in the history of the order that he was on the poster, but it was because my colleagues of the PR department found him the most attractive man of the whole series of land portraits. Well, his intended bride had a different opinion on him. She didn't like him at all. And at the moment he wanted to marry her and the decision was taken, she was only 10 years old, which was, even for the standard of the time, too young. The minimum age was 12. He negotiated the contract with her father, Frederik Hendrik of Orange-Nassau, the stadtholder of Holland and other provinces, and the commander-in-chief of the Dutch army. And for Hendrik Casimir, a marriage with his daughter was very attractive to, he was of the lower branch of the House of Nassau, and this marriage would increase his status. But the intended mother-in-law, Amalia van Solms, thought him too low for her daughter. She had higher ambitions, and she wanted her daughter to marry the English crown prince or the elector of Brandenburg. And the girl herself didn't like these guys either. She was in love with a French officer in her father's army, but her mother forced her to do, and it was really crying and locking her up. And she said, "Oh, if I were that, or if I were a peasant girl, then I could marry the man of my choice." But she had to marry the elector of Brandenburg, and on her 19th birthday she married him. And her father, on his deathbed later, apologized that he had forced her. The missed groom was at that time already dead. He was killed in action in July 1640 at the siege of Hulst near Antwerp, and his blood-stained shirt, as well as the fatal bullet and a piece of bone removed during the surgery, were kept as a kind of secular relics in the national struggle against Spain, and they are now in the collection of the Rijksmuseum. Well, what has this sad story to do with our topic? A lot. This land commander was part of this Dutch state process, and I'll show you today the connection between the Dutch state process and the history of the Teutonic Order Bailiwick of Utrecht. First, the state process, the formation of the Dutch state. It came out of a series of duchies and counties and bishoprics in the late Middle Ages. This is a situation of the 14th centuries, and well, the Low Countries, the Netherlands, is for that time, in fact, a back construction, a construction of later. It was a series of small lands in the northwestern corner of the Holy Roman Empire, in the northern tip of the Kingdom of France. You see the red line of the border between France and the Holy Roman Empire. Unification started as late as the 15th century with the Dukes of Burgundy, Philip the Good and his son Charles the Bold. Philip the Good founded, for instance, the Order of the Golden Fleece to bind the high nobility of these territories together. After the death of after the death of Charles the Bold are outlined yesterday by Catharina Kemmer and Attila Györgyös. So it came after his death to the Burgundian heritage came to Maximilian I, who married the daughter of Charles the Bold. And the Burgundian heritage was extended by Maximilian's grandson, Charles V. And from that point on, you can really speak of the Netherlands. The name of the Netherlands were used, and it was the former principalities were now provinces. The 17 provinces of the Netherlands with Charles V as Lord. And he extended the unification process of the Dukes of Burgundy. You see here this schedule, well, I'm sorry, it's in Dutch, with himself as the sovereign, the king, and he was represented from Brussels by a governess. At first his aunt Margaret of Austria, and later his sister Maria of Hungary, the widow of Louis II, the king of Hungary. He was killed in action at the Battle of Mohacs. He had several governance bodies, and in the provinces he was represented by stadtholders. Stadtholders, people from the men from the high nobility, members of the Golden Fleece. And the provinces were represented by states, the representatives of the clergy, the nobility, and the cities. To suppress rebellion and defense against foreign enemies, he had built several castles of the type Giampietro Brunelli showed us yesterday. This is the castle Vredenburg in Utrecht. The Habsburg Netherlands were part of his large empire. He was, as you know, emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. He had his Austrian lands. He was king of Spain with the Italian possessions, the new colonies. And he inherited also the conflict with the King of France and with the expanding Ottoman Empire. And a new challenge was the Reformation of Luther and later of Calvin. Charles wanted a solution and urged for a church council, the Council of Trent, but this council only deepened the schism in Western Christendom and was the start of the Counter-Reformation. Charles did not manage to solve the religious problem in the Holy Roman Empire, to suppress the Protestant princes. He concentrated on the Netherlands to fight Protestantism over there, and in 1548 he loosened the ties of the Netherlands with the Holy Roman Empire, creating a more autonomous Burgundische Kreis. He connected this Burgundische Kreis with the Kingdom of Spain, and when he abdicated in 1555, he was succeeded as emperor, as you know, by his brother Ferdinand, who also got the Austrian lands, and Spain and the Netherlands went to his son Philip II. Here you see him with the chain of the golden fleece, but in his hand he has a rosary, really symbolic for him because he was a very, very devout Catholic, persecuting Protestants in the Netherlands, which was not a very popular measure. Like it was not as popular as in Spain, where the auto da fe had popular support, but in the Netherlands there was protest, and this protest was formulated by William the Silent the Count of Nassau, Prince of Orange, who pleaded for religious tolerance, for freedom of conscience. The lesser nobility presented a petition to the government, Philip's sister Margaret, in 1566, and during that year protests escalated, and in the summer there was a wave of iconoclasm starting in Flanders and going through the Netherlands. Philip, as a devout Catholic, was of course furious, and he sent his general, the Duke of Alba, to the Netherlands to suppress the rebellion. And in this propaganda painting you see Alba sitting on a throne, holding the 17 provinces represented as maids on chains, and treading with his feet the charters of liberties, the old rights of cities and nobles. He also imposed heavy taxes on the Netherlands. The discontent was used by William the Silent to start a rebellion, a new rebellion in 1572, especially successful in two northwestern provinces, Holland and Zeeland. And the Duke of Alba and his successors did not succeed in suppressing this rebellion. And in the loyalist provinces, the Spanish soldiers the poorly paid Spanish soldiers misbehaved in such a way that these 15 provinces started negotiations with the two rebellious provinces, ending in a deal, the pacification of Ghent of November 1576. Here you see a map of the situation after this pacification, with only Luxembourg in Spanish hands. This could have been the start of a state, and in that time the States General and William the Silent, who was the leader of this rebellion, they maintained that they did not fight the Spanish king, but only his evil advisors. They chose their own governor, Matthias, the brother of Rudolf II, and he became later the emperor. The governor sent by Philip, the Duke of Parma, managed to reconcile with the high nobility in the south, the Catholic, French-speaking high nobility in the Union of Utrecht, beginning of 1579, and as a reaction, the northern provinces stuck closer together in the Union of Utrecht, still maintaining the fiction, not fighting the king, but only his evil advisors, in this case the Duke of Parma. The fiction was ended in 1581 when the rebellious provinces signed an act of abjuration. Philip was no longer their king, and they started to find a new sovereign. They offered the sovereignty to Francis, the brother of the French king. This misfired. Then they offered sovereignty to the French king Henry III himself, then to Queen Elizabeth, of England, and they all refused. And so, because they could not find a sovereign, they became a republic. So they, the job remained vacant, and they became a republic with the text of the Union of Utrecht as de facto constitution. But this new republic was threatened. Here you see it in deep orange. The Duke of Parma managed to conquer most of the territory of the new republic, and it was a threatened republic in the northwestern corner of the Netherlands. But in 1588, when Parma was on the brink of victory, and the republic, in the republic there were serious discussion of surrender, Philip ordered him to bring his troops to the Flemish coast to support the invasion of England, an invasion that totally failed. And then he ordered to intervene in the French Civil War to support the Catholic League against the new king, Henry IV. This gave the Dutch the opportunity to start a counter-offensive led by Maurice of Nassau, the very young son. He was started when he was only 17, the son of the murdered William the Silent, and he started a counter-offensive and managing to reconquer the lost part, at least north of the rivers, with a bridgehead south of the rivers. And he had a scientific method of sieges. He had a small army, well paid, no looting after surrender, so towns easily surrendered to him. There was also, he tried to avoid open battles. He won one battle, and it's the most well-known year in Dutch history, is kind of the Dutch version of 1066. The war became a stalemate, and in 1601 there was a 12-year truce between the Dutch Republic and the Spanish king, which was a de facto recognition, only de facto. After 12 years, the war started again and became connected with the 30 Years' War. At first, a Spanish successes. But when Frederick Hendrik, the brother of Maurice, took over with Ernst Casimir, the father of Hendrik Casimir, I already mentioned, he started a counter-offensive which was successful, but he failed to reconquer Antwerp, and it became a stalemate again. Peace negotiations started, ending in the Peace of Münster, part of the Peace of Westphalia, and here you see the swearing in the peace. The Dutch Republic was now recognized as internationally recognized as an independent state, also no longer part of the Holy Roman Empire. So this the Peace of Westphalia was the end of the Dutch state formation process. Now we turn to the role of the Teutonic Order Bailiwick of Utrecht in this process. The Bailiwick of Utrecht was one of the bailiwicks of the Teutonic Order within the Holy Roman Empire, consisting of several commanderies spread over the northern Netherlands. After Albrecht from Brandenburg turned the remaining part of the order's state and ended as Grand Master, Charles V nominated the Deutschmeister, Walter von Kronberg, as the administrator, as the acting Grand Master. And Utrecht was loyal to this acting Grand Master, and this document is from the Utrecht archive. The then Lens commander, the guy second from the left, Wouter van Amstel van Minden, he showed his loyalty to Walter von Kronborg and Charles V, sending knights to the Hungarian front against the Turks. This loyalty and fighting against the Turks was at odds at 30 years later during the Dutch rebellion, because the rebels thought the Turks as the enemies of the enemy, so the French, and they had even medals with the Turkish crescent, and their slogan was rather Turkish than Popish. During the 1570s, during this stage of the Dutch revolt, part of the possessions, part of the commanderies of the bailiwick of Utrecht were in rebellious territory, and part were in loyalist territory. Also, the main seat of the Teutonic Order, bailiwick of Utrecht, the Lance Commandery in Utrecht, was in Spanish hands. The Spanish were in the castle built by Charles V, and after the Spanish were driven out from the northern Netherlands and also from this castle in Utrecht, all commanderies were part of this coming up Dutch Republic, the rebellious territory, and it was expected that the Teutonic Order would move gradually into the direction of Protestantism. The territory became more and more Protestant in character. William the Silent wanted a cooperation between religions, but it became more and more Protestant. The collegiate churches in Utrecht became gradually Protestant. But with the Teutonic Order, the opposite happened. The guy to the right here, Jacob Taats van Amerongen, he was a convinced Catholic and he was pro-Spanish. His father was the loyalist mayor of Utrecht until 1577 and had to leave, of course. And for Jacob Taats van Amerongen, he turned the Teutonic Order bailiwick of Utrecht in a direction of Catholicism. And for him, he hoped the Spanish would come back. And in 1580, the Catholic worship was banned in Utrecht. So the Church of the Teutonic Order, bailiwick of Utrecht, was no longer in use as a Catholic church, but he had secret masses read in the house, and he bribed the sheriff to turn a blind eye. He also commissioned the portrait series, which was clearly a Catholic statement. He sent knights to the Hungarian front in 1594. He pursued the new statutes by Grandmaster Maximilian of Austria in 1606. Well, such a convinced Catholic, pro-Spanish organization in the territory of the emerging Dutch Republic, this could not go well. The States of Utrecht, since 1581, the abjuration of Philip, the States of Utrecht were the official sovereign of the bailiwick of Utrecht. They had their assembly in the former Franciscan monastery. For them, Catholic pro-Spanish organizations were a problem, and it was not only the Teutonic Order, but also the Hospitallers, who had their headquarters in Utrecht and were loyal to the Grand Master on Malta, closely connected to Spain. So after the death of the last bailiwick, the Order of St. John and the Hospitallers were abolished and their property was confiscated, their monastery became the municipal hospital and later the university hospital. Taats van Amerongen managed to nominate a Catholic successor, Diederik Blois van Treslong. And this Blois van Treslong tried to do the same trick in 1615, but for the States of Utrecht it was over now. They issued a decree that a new Lance commander and also new members of the bailiwick of Utrecht had to be Protestants. And his successor, Jasper van Linden, was indeed more or less a Protestant. And when he died, the Grand Master tried to put forward a Catholic Lance commander in Utrecht, but the States of Utrecht wanted Hendrik Casimir. He was at that time only 7 years old, but his tasks were taken over by his father, Ernst Casimir, the brother-in-arms of Frederik Hendrik. Hendrik Casimir, as I told you in the beginning, he abolished celibacy, creating a rupture with the Grand Master and the Central Order. Well, he had no time to marry because of his early death, but his brother, Willem Frederik, he married. And he married another daughter of Frederik Hendrik, Albertine, Agnes, and the present King of the Netherlands is a direct descendant of this couple. Well, the Grand Master of the time was Leopold Wilhelm of Austria, member of the House of Habsburg, and he was the Spanish governor in the southern Netherlands. So there you have the political opposition between the bailiwick of Utrecht, part of the Dutch Republic, and the Central Order connected with Spain. Last month I was in the Deutsch und Zentralarchiv and I looked through this box, the Utrecht box, where the documents relating to the separation between the bailiwick of Utrecht and the Central Order, and in these in these box you have several documents trying to reunify the bailiwick of Utrecht with the Central Order, and pointing to two problems here. In this quote, they will enjoy the privileges of the order, respecting the authority of the honorable lords, states of Utrecht and the other free Netherlands. So there were two problems: the problem of loyalty to the Dutch Republic and the matter of celibacy and the matter of religion. Well, the matter of religion was not that much of a problem. So you had Protestant bailiwicks in Saxony and Thuringen, Hessen. But the problem of the celibacy, also during reunification attempts in the 18th century, that was really the breaking point. But from the point of view of the Central Order, they wanted Utrecht back, and they left the chair of Utrecht at the table of the chapter room, and this chair remained empty. Well, in the exhibition I made about the Teutonic Order Bailiwick of Utrecht 10 years ago, I showed the new situation of married commanders with double portraits of the Utrecht land commanders with their spouses. And also their roles, the man, this man left, he was a politician, member of the States of the province of Gelderland, and he was a general, and his wife was the granddaughter of a field marshal whose death mark was the highlight of the exhibition for many visitors. At the occasion of the marriage, they had made a silver plate with the coats of arms of the two families, Van der Randwijk and Van Rheden. This silver plate was bought by the bailiwick of Utrecht last week at an auction in Brussels, and I got the information that this was on sale from my colleague of the Deutsche Zentralarchiv, Bernhard Huber, and in a way this is symbolic for the renewed contacts between the bailiwick of Utrecht and the Central Order. 10 years ago, my exhibition was opened by the then Grand Master, and last year the present Grand Master, Frank Bayard, visited Utrecht, and it was the third visit of a Grand Master to Utrecht after 1570 and 2015. And so with these, I would like to end with these renewed contacts after the rupture of 1640. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for the very interesting presentation. I will have a question on this at the end. So if somebody have, yeah, maybe it's better.
I have a question to the second presentation concerning seals the repository and the database could be added a little bit by paintings of the seals and by typology, because most of them were heraldic seals, of course, but possibly it could help to deepen the general line you have explained. But I don't know whether there is a money and a good painter, because photos are very well, but to see at seals, it's very often, it is very practical to have the eyes.
Thank you for your question. And now the project is only like an online catalog, not a database or something. As you mentioned, it would be another type of a database would be raised, and after we can examine like this. I can work with that photos we get from the archive, because, for example, some of the archives we cannot examine in person, the polycyclic documents. For example, from Warsaw, I traveled there to the archive and try to examine in person, but the most polycyclic documents, like charters, I cannot examine in person, so we have to work with the seals, but the photos from that we get from the archive. But for example, especially the photos from Warsaw is the best condition, so that is the lucky thing. So maybe if we have opportunity, we will go in an archive and examine in person the seals. Thank you for your question.
So other questions?
Yes, it could help, and we examine it After all of the seals, it's proceed. After it, we can make typology about it, if you mention this.
There were no examination like before in the Hungarian medical studies, so that's like a pilot project.
So, any other questions?
Professor De Bruin, please, do you have sources about the evolution of the commanderies from the economic point of view? You said some of them were in the Catholic part, some other in the Protestant part, no? The commandery is a peculiar economic also unit in a territory, no? So it would be interesting to know which is the evolution from 1580 to 1644-48.
Well, two years ago, a PhD student published his dissertation on the development of the possessions of the Teutonic Order Bailiwick of Utrecht from the 13th to the 16th century. It flourished, and they gave their surpluses to the Grand Master that diminished it at the end of the 15th and early 16th century. But after the new situation after 1640, there was an enormous neglect, also economic neglect of the commanderies. They were the land commanders could marry. They no longer lived in the commandery houses, and as late as the mid 18th century, with a reorganization and a professional steward in Utrecht, economic better times started for the Bailiwick of Utrecht.
So, other questions?
Ich hätte Frage an Herr Heckmann. Was für ein Verhältnis entsteht zwischen ausgegangener Korrespondenz, die sich als Konzepte der Briefe im Herzoglichen Briefarchiv befindet, und solcher Korrespondenz in ostpreußischen Folianten? Sind die Briefe teilweise doppelt erhalten oder ist das parallel?
Zum Teil doppelt erhalten, zum Teil aber auch nicht. Das ist bei der ausgehenden Korrespondenz ist eine Überlieferungslücke, und man muss im Grunde genommen, wenn man forschen will, immer beides, die Bücher und das lose Schriftstück, das lose Material in den Kästen ansehen, um genau sicher zu sein, was ist doppelt überliefert und was ist nur als Konzept oder eingegangenes Schreiben. Die sind auch nicht immer nur eingetragen, man hat es vergessen oder es ist weg. Ja.
Any other questions?
Question to Zoltán, Dr. Szolnoki, about this vendetta. It is characteristic of the mentality of an Italian city. Was it particularly characteristic of the higher circles of the Sienese society? I mean, the families, the great the families, because I have seen the Ptolemy family. We know at the beginning of the 14th century it had a great economic wealth all around Europe. They had agents and factors and then deposits from London to Paris. So there was a great wealth and property at stake. So was it more peculiarly characteristic to get, not just to enter into a vendetta, but to reconcile, to get to a compromise when there is a huge wealth at stake between the highest families in Siena? Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think it's a very good question that we always read in medieval Italian chronicles, that the wealthiest and most powerful families are killing each other on the streets, and it's controversial if we make a parallel with the economic and political interests of them. And there is two different hypotheses about this question. The first and original one is originated from Andrea Zorzi, who said that there was some kind of culture of vendetta, which was brought down by the authors of the so-called popolo. The men of the popolo wanted to get the places from the government, the city government, the power, and it was a great thing that they wanted to exclude these grande families from the city, from the rule of the city. And Zorzi said that these stories mainly contain just symbolic contents and not the real events in every case. But there is another opinion of Lansing, who said that these stories based on some kind of real predatory culture, which was based on knighthood and the cases of honor and rural signory and so on. So it's a very interesting and complex topic, I think. But you are right, it was a bit controversial that they killed each other on the street. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Are they not in the second edition, Carducci edition? In your slide, yes. I saw as your source, the analysis. Yes. But if I saw look well, correctly, first edition, Oradori 17, are in the second edition? Yes.
After my opinion, Mr. Bofsky said that the parties who were who won stayed in the town, and the other ones were banned outside for some years, for 10 years, 15 years, or something like that. And it's very interesting that you have said now that it is a type of vendetta. That is a very, very stark argument. You have the annals, but I'm not quite sure whether it is a little bit over-exaggerated, or could it be found only because you have used annals?
Yes, that's right. Bofsky said that some families were excluded from the politics of Siena. For example, we spoke about the Salimbeni, the Ptolemy, and so on. But when we read city chronicles, we always saw that these families always try to come back to the city, or in some cases they fought each other on the street of the city. So I think there is a controversial thing, because they were banished from the city, but also they not just tried to return, but they lived in the city. So it's a very interesting point of view that there were other interesting things, for example, in the countryside. A lot of cases we read that, for example, not just the Senese elite, but for example, the Colonna and the Orsini fought huge battles between each other near the fields of Rome. And there were similar things happened in the countryside of Siena, when the Ptolemy, the Scotti, for example, or other families. And in the 13th century, the Bonsignori was the same, but they were decapitated by other famous families. So it's always turbulent decades, I think. Thank you.
I also have a question, which is more of curiosity regarding the ideological dimension of the Utrecht order. Did you notice in the primary sources, in symbolism and so on, in the very early Protestant history of the order, some Catholic remains, or the transition, ideologically speaking, it was gradually or suddenly, or how did you? Some Catholic remains, or yes. The transition was sudden or gradual?
Okay, the question was whether the transition from Catholic to Protestant was gradual or just a sharp line. Well, it was gradual. For instance, the collegiate churches in Utrecht, you had a similar process earlier, and the collegiate churches, the canons were from 1580 no longer priests. They were allowed to marry. For instance, the deacon of the chapter of St. John, he married a nun, but they didn't have to, and they didn't have to, and they were allowed to, the Catholics were allowed to remain, but new canons had to be Protestants, but several Catholics came in, and the last Catholic canon died in 1680. Well, the Teutonic Order was in the same process. The predecessor of Taats van Amerongen had Protestant inclination, but then Taats van Amerongen was against this line and a Catholic. But when the States of Utrecht in 1615 blocked the nomination of a Catholic successor, they issued a decree that a new Lance Commander, but also new members, had to adhere the true Christian Reformed religion, but that was only for new members. And the last Catholic who was allowed to become a member with dispensation was in 1640. So it lasted until the 1660s before the last Catholic knight died. So yes, it was a gradual process.
Thank you. Some other questions? So I think we can end the session. Thank you.
And we have some late, but according to the program, we cannot plan a break, a coffee break before the closing remarks. So hold on, and I would like to ask Attila Bárány and Zsolt Ónadi to take some closing remarks about the conference, the first and the second day. So please come to, I don't know which will be the first one, but come to the microphone.
So at the end of the conference, as we both, Zsolt and me, learned from a late professor of ours, we have to make some afterthoughts and just ask ourselves what we have learned, what novelty, what new things we have come across and found in the presentations, why we were here for 2 days. So, there was a reason for that. So we do not leave without some closing remarks. And the point, because we are the two of us standing here, unfortunately I wasn't here yesterday, so I asked Zsolt to sum up yesterday's sessions in a few words, please.
Thank you very much. Trying to make this story a bit short, but I should really share a short story. From rhetorical point of view, it's a little bit strange because this is the captatio benevolentiae. It definitely should come in the very beginning. So 28 years ago, we both, as youngsters, attended a conference in Rostock. I think it was the Niederadel in Ostelbien und Ostmitteleuropa, 12th and 14th Jahrhundert. And the late professor of ours, Professor János Bak, delivered the opening words, not the closing words, the opening words, but it was also a bilingual conference, English and German, and it was just unbelievable. Professor Bak delivered a speech in a way that each alternate sentence was either in English or in German, and both speech made sense. Even putting together the entire text made sense. Now, I'm absolutely unable to do so, but instead, very short comments, a sort of summary of yesterday. I definitely learned a lot. And one of the most striking meaning or reference of transition is actually the transition of sources available for scholars. I'm not really an expert of this late medieval period, and mostly work on 12th to late 14th, very early 15th century materials. And here we experienced an amazing, not only much abundant amount of sources, but different genres, which is quite obvious for the scholars from Western Europe. But for example, in the Kingdom of Hungary, having diaries, letters, correspondence of diplomatic correspondence is not really something you can easily find, I don't know, the 13th century. But also still standing yesterday, I try to use sort of keywords, not really copying the keywords or hashtags as our students used to call it, but let's say my own keywords I try to use as labels. We realize that one aspect of transition is the many wars, which characterize the late medieval and early modern period, and also this ever-returning question, how can we define, if at all, the transition between the medieval and early modern period? These are factors, these are characteristics which either can be regarded as a decisive factors, or at least just the indicators of tendencies. And of course, it's not in general the period of many wars, but the new enemies or the new menace, especially the Turks. And as Professor Bárány mentioned earlier today, we already, so to say, agreed that Venice is an important hub of this late medieval period, and of course try to avoid any silly jokes. I usually commit such moments, but I just refer to the last slide of Professor Bárány, the English envoy or ambassador Thomas Hannibal, and I just imagine when he was waiting for being entered the great council, he was invited as Hannibal Anteportas. I'm sorry. So also extremely important was the transition or changes of diplomatic contacts, alliances, or even I love very much the loyalties. How far they really functioned as real alliances or strong alliances, or just switching between or being accommodated between loyalties. That's as turning points or milestones. The death of important persons or sort of dramatis personae proved to be very important. The question, they really initiated a sort of transition, or they accelerated already functioning transition, or it was just really just accident that transition started after the death of those important or influential people. Sometimes these situations revealed or reflected to realpolitik, sometimes just imaginary lands or ideas of non-existing empires. Just moving towards the afternoon, warfare. Fortresses. It revealed a completely new world, and it's not only technology or transition of technology, but also military practice, which also showed the importance of that transition. And not really a closing point of yesterday, but the let's say my most striking expression was the transition of traditional power structures. This was really shockingly new for me, because many tiny elements was already known, but putting all these next to each other, there are more visible parts of this really huge puzzle. So that's about yesterday, but now here comes the today's.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps what I will definitely remember even tomorrow morning, that Angelica was a real bellezza, and for whom it was necessary to kill another family's brother. And a Teutonic knight can marry a nun. It's unbelievable in 17th century. So this is a period of change, continuity, transition, and transformation. Even from the fields of economy, towns and cities, commerce and livestock farming, just in brackets. Perhaps you could see too many images of the Hungarian grey oxen at least 4 or 5 times, but I think in Debrecen it's understandable. It's a kind of link between the points of transition or these key milestones, because the Hungarian grey oxen is the image. It's a kind of a historical. I would even see Louis de Memoir, the Hungarian grey oxen and the Hortobágy livestock farming is a milestone in the development of another type of kind of a market town with background, and on the basis of which economic inequality can also be seen as balanced, and these towns were partners for their Western European partners in cities. And it is not just the case that Western and Central European regions developed in equal economies, but they have their own distinct production profiles, and the development of cities and towns in East Central Europe had a kind of a dual development. In one way, they continued the trends observed in the late Middle Ages, but there were emerging new forms of urbanity and the diversity of urban development paths. Coming to the field of learning, intellect, literacy, we could see many cases of a new kind of literacy from the formulary books of observant Franciscans and their written communications and and this is in a way the new phenomenon of a highly developed organizational culture, literacy in the case of the observant Franciscans, even in the 16th, 17th century. It could be put in relation to the modern, early modern archival practice of the Herzoglich Preußisches Briefarchiv, and the early modern custom and the way and the mode of the usage of seals at the beginning of the 16th century, and the different the seals and their colors and their imagery and their typology in the 16th century has a different character than back in the late 14th century. It is attached to social wealth and even political power. And back in the field of intellect and learning, we could see that, for example, we could see a range of manifold sources and maps, for example, that the maps. It's important to me that these Puch map, for example, we had seen was dedicated to Ferdinand and Charles, and even Charles, at least Charles V, Emperor Charles V, and Ferdinand was mentioned at least 5 or 6 papers. And the thing that this new map with the figure of a woman dedicated to them is a way how they see Europe in the Habsburg way, in the new way of the new world, Germany and Austria being in the heart of the woman. At least it seems to me. And the new trends in the university, the peregrinatio, with the coming of the Reformation, you might find links that the new students of the Peregrinatio Academica could see new world view based on not only on Nicolaus Copernicus, but as we have heard, the treatise, new world view based on the treatise De Sfera by the English scholar Johannes de Sacrobosco. So when a new student from a Calvinist city from Debrecen went over to Utrecht, for example, and he could not only see Protestant former Teutonic knights, but could study Copernican teachings based on English, the Johannes de Sacro Bosco. It was continued to be studied. And there were turning points, as Zolt mentioned, and at certain turning points is not only Mohács for us Hungarians, but for the whole Mediterranean and the whole commerce and trade of the medieval world, based on centered in Venice, was a turning point. Was the siege of Rhodes and the fall of Rhodes, which made also a break with the certain parts of the Knights of St. John, who moved to Malta, but of course they, as far as I know, they were not allowed to marry anybody by that time. It was not such a new word, but in a way new. But there were certain aspects, and the inland migration in Hungary and newer territories like Tokaj-Hegyalja region was relocated wine growing, and a different form of urbanity emerged there. And we could find that the revival of Catholicism, it was also in a way preserving and importing modern European culture into the Balkans, into Hungary. When we need to write an introduction, because there will be a volume, we need to cover all the things, perhaps together, as we started to sum up the major points and issues of the 2 days together. And László Pósán asked me to announce that he's the main mover of this conference and would be the editor of a volume. There will be a volume to be edited and to be published, and we need these very good presentations in a written form, and this is not the best thing to announce, but you should. Well, we ask you to submit it until the end of June the 30th. So we need all these presentations in writing, and we like to publish it in a volume, in a joint volume, in German and in English, and we'll be coming back to you in emails about the bibliography and forms of notes and etc. Okay, thank you very much.